guys, welcome back. It's me Swastika, and today we will be going through the current affairs for July 14th, 2020 from the Hindu. So before we move on, I would like to tell you a little about myself. So I have done my master's in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. I have done my BA honors in political science from Delhi University. And in the case you like my content, you find it interesting, then please press the subscribe button. That's the red button at the bottom of the video. So let's begin. So today we would be discussing some short news, which is basically going to be about Google investing 75,000 crore rupees in India's digital sector. Secondly, we would be discussing Shahabahar port and how India is no longer a part of it because Iran is cutting us off. Next, we would be discussing some new procurements made by the Navy in the upcoming decade, and lastly we would be going through the editorial page, and in the editorial page we would be talking about this article which talks about enabling people to govern from themselves. So without further ado, let's get to it. So Google is saying that they want to invest $10 billion, which is 75,000 crore rupees, in India. This they are going to do within the next 5 to 7 years. They want to focus on digitizing the economy and building India's first products and services. So Sundar Pichai is the CEO of Google, and he is also the CEO of Apple, which is basically the parent firm of Google. And he said that this will be done through equity investments, partnerships, and operations. Sundar Pichai is also an Indian, and if you can recall, in the previous few days current affairs, we had discussed extensively on how the digital sector of India is has the potential to really explode and to really create a lot of jobs because we have a huge demographic dividend that is young, and India is increasingly getting digitized. We had also talked about how the foreign direct investment in the digital sector is bound to increase in the post pandemic world, and this we see happening today. So basically, they would be focusing on four key areas. Firstly, they would be focusing on enabling affordable access and information for every Indian in their own language. They would then be building products and services deeply relevant to India. They would then be empowering businesses on their digital transformation journey. And lastly, they would be leveraging tech and artificial intelligence for social good, such as health, education, so on and so forth. So, in the next piece of news, we see that Iran is dropping India from the Chabahar rail project, and the reason that they are giving for this is funding delay from the Indian side. So Chahabhar Rail project was basically a trilateral agreement between Iran, Afghanistan, and India. So this was basically supposed to be a railway project. A railway line was supposed to be made connecting the three countries. So it has been 4 years since India signed an agreement to construct a rail line from Chahabhar port to Zahidan along the border with Afghanistan. Yet Iran has just removed India at the last minute from the project. I remember when this news came 4 years ago, it exploded. Prime Minister Narendra Modi went all the way to Iran to actually finalize the project. So Iranian government is to proceed on its own, and the reason that they have given for this primarily is the funding delay. So Iran government will be using approximately $400 million from the Iranian National Development Bank for this project. So it is necessary to understand the backdrop and the context in which this is happening, which we are going to discuss now. The backdrop is that right now Iran and China are finalizing a 25 years strategic partnership, which will include Chinese involvement in Jahabad's duty-free zone and oil refinery nearby, and possibly a larger role in Jahabad port as well. So this is the backdrop that this is happening in. If you remember yesterday's current affairs, we also talked about how Iran is the economy of Iran is suffocating under the US sanctions, and because of that, even though it used to be one of the largest producers of oil, it is not in a position to export it, and this is heavily impacting the Iranian economy in a negative sense. Because of that, Iran is moving closer to China, and China is investing heavily in Iran. So this we also see today because China is now finalizing a 25-year strategic partnership, and this will include Chinese involvement in Chabahar's duty-free zone and oil refinery, and possibly a larger role in Chabahar port as well. So Indians never started the work. So this was a complaint from the Iranian side. They said that the Indians never started the work because they were scared of US sanctions. So they are scared that US will impose sanctions on this entire project, and then they will not be able to continue with it, which is why nobody from the Indian side is actually taking it up, and the funds are not being provided. So US had basically provided a sanctions waiver for this project in that area, and they had said you go move ahead with it, but they are not, and that is the reason that they have cited. So, in the next piece of news, we see that the Navy is looking forward to getting a new Hindustan Aeronautics Limited built twin engine aircraft based fighter aircraft being developed by the DRDO. So, a new twin engine aircraft carrier based fighter aircraft is being developed by the DRDO, and this is going to be a replacement for the Russian MiG 29K carrier jets in service. So, if you would remember, in the past few current affairs, we had seen that India is in fact procuring more of the Russian MiGs. I think around 21 or 22 we had discussed, along with Antara and Pinaka, which or also missile systems. So this new HAL built twin engine aircraft will be a replacement for the Russian MiG 29K, which we always import from Russia. So the Navy is currently operating a Russian origin carrier INS Vikram Aditya and expects to have the first indigenous aircraft carrier Vikrant operational by 2022. So the Russian origin carrier INS Vikram Aditya is currently being operated, and we expect to have the first indigenous aircraft carrier Vikrant operational by 2022. You just have to keep this in mind. So moving on, we are going to discuss this article from the editorial page. This page. This is the editorial page, and this is the middle article. So this is written by Arjun Maira, who was a member of the planning commission. So basically, the crux of this entire article is that he is saying that people should be able to govern themselves, and there should be a greater emphasis which needs to be put on local governance and local government. He is saying this in the context because a lot of global organizations and a lot of global institutions like WTO, UN, even WHO have failed in the crisis of the pandemic. So, a lot of architectural flaws have been revealed in the governance systems due to the pandemic. The lockdown has made it easier to manage the health crisis but difficult to manage the economic crisis. As we can clearly see, we are entering into a global recession, and the human civilization has advanced with the evolution of better institutions to manage public affairs. So, he says that in his article that 100 years ago, 400 years ago, we did not have a UN. We did not have a WTO. We did not have a WHO. These institutions evolved over time, and they evolved for our betterment, and so that we are in a position to manage the public affairs in a better manner. Yet, this pandemic has revealed a fundamental flaw in their design. There is a mismatch in the design of the institutions at the global level with the challenges they are required to manage. So, I think the primary problem is that these global institutions are not in a position, they are giving us uniform solutions to problems that are very heterogeneous in nature because of the differing circumstances, the differing cultures, the differing geographical locations of and the different kinds of people. So the solution which would be applicable for the same problem in Tokyo is probably not the best solution for the same problem in Beijing. So this uniform application of solutions in a heterogeneous world is in fact problematic, and the only way that we can solve this problem is to move forward in a localized manner by giving the power to the people to govern themselves. So there are 17 sustainable development goals. I will quickly go through this because this is sometimes in like papers they ask you this. So goal number one talks about no poverty. Goal number two talks about zero hunger. Goal number three talks about good health and well-being. Goal number four talks about quality education. Goal number five talks about gender equality. Goal number six talks about clean water and sanitation. Goal number seven talks about affordable and clean energy. Goal number eight talks about decent work and economic growth. Goal number nine talks about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Goal number 10 talks about reduced inequality. Goal number 11 talks about sustainable cities and communities. Goal number 12 talks about responsible consumption and production. Goal number 13 talks about climate action. Goal number 14 about life below water. Goal number 15 about life on land. Goal number 16 about peace and justice, strong institutions. Goal number 17 about partnerships to achieve the goals. So these are the 17 SDGs. So what he is basically trying to say in this article is that the sustainable development goals are not in a position to address the localized issues of global problems. So this that is because these systemic problems are interconnected with each other and they don't exist in silos. So what does silos means and what does it mean that these problems are interconnected? This means that the economic problem doesn't just exist in isolation, in an isolated sphere of itself. It exists with the environmental problem. Right. So when we talk about silos is basically a cylindrical, isolated space where you only exist for yourself, which is not how these problems exist. They are completely interdependent with each other. For example, the economy with the environment. So there is an urgent need for localized solutions. These solutions cannot be thrust upon local people by outside experts, but rather have to be the right solution for the local people. So this is very important because just whatever solutions that are there, they cannot be a thrust by experts and outside experts who but rather they have to be the right solution for the local people. So the governance of the people must not only be for the people, it must be by the people too. Moving on, so he talks about the importance of localized and how certain scholars have mentioned it. The first one I would talk about is Eleanor Ostrom, who was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics in 2009, and she had developed the principles for self-governing communities from research on the ground in many countries, including India. So a lot of these scholars talk about the need for localized solutions, and in fact, this is super important. And the second he mentions is E.F. Schumacher, who proposed new economics founded on local enterprise and was very consistent with Gandhiji's ideas. So certain problems that he has mentioned is that there are too many schemes out there. The center has a different set of schemes, the state has a different set of schemes. The citizen doesn't know how many schemes are there and what they are entitled to. So this is majorly problematic, especially we see that Kerala, which also happens to be one of the most literate states of our country, is performing better in terms of managing the crisis than other states. Now, we may ask ourselves why. This is because there is a stronger local government there. So, the direct lesson that we get to learn from this is that the government has to support and enable people to govern themselves. So thank you for listening to me. And if you like my content, then please subscribe. You can connect with me on Instagram. I have put my handle right there. And thank you for listening to me.